Millionaire's shock as she discovers the hidden truth behind a cleaner's incredible necklace. Melissa Harper stepped through her front door, the whirlwind of the week's trials and tribulations still swirling around in her mind. As a corporate lawyer, she thrived under pressure, skillfully navigating the high-stakes world of deals and disputes. But beneath her polished exterior lay an unsettling hollowness, the relentless pursuit of success masquerading as fulfillment. She blinked, momentarily lost in thought, when the absence of Clara, her cleaning lady, struck her. Clara had been the bright light in her otherwise monotonous life, the one who put a comforting order to Melissa's chaotic existence. "What happened to you?" she muttered, an unfamiliar weight pressing at her chest. No notification, no call. Had something gone wrong? The unease gnawed at her mind as she explored the quiet house. Each room echoed a silence that felt oppressive. Worry washed over her as she turned to look at the pristine kitchen, a testament to Clara's hard work. And there it was, glinting on the countertop, the necklace. How had she missed it before? It was exquisite, gleaming with an allure that felt misplaced amongst the simplicity of Clara's life. The necklace was a vivid contrast to Melissa's tailored suits and sharp heels. Why would a woman who kept her life so modest wear such an extravagant piece? Was it one more hidden secret beneath the surface? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can, leave a like. It really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Melissa's breath quickened as she thought of Clara, that resilient, hard-working woman with a warm smile who effortlessly tucked her own struggles away. Who was she, really? And what weight did that necklace carry? Curiosity morphed into a sense of urgency. She had to ask Clara. She had to dig deeper. With each passing moment, the revelation tugged at her. How could she have overlooked this world behind the ordinary? It revealed another layer of injustice that simmered under her affluent existence, reminding her that the lines between rich and poor weren't just drawn by wealth but by stories and sacrifices. As she paced, unease settled in her gut. She knew she lived a life of privilege, but did that mean she had to remain oblivious to the lives of others? A can of worms lay open in front of her, a choice set against her carefully constructed life. How could she be the attorney defending the wealthy, while ignored the stories of those like Clara? The mounting pressure was suffocating. Just as determination began to crystallize within her, the door creaked open, and Clara stepped inside, her smile faltering as she noticed Melissa's intensity. In that moment, everything hung in balance, a thread tethered between their worlds, and yet so perilously fragile. Melissa felt her heart race, anticipation mixed with dread. The truth was about to unravel, and she wasn't sure. Was she ready to confront it? Clara stood before her, an embodiment of resilience, and a question quickly formed in Melissa's mind. Would she step into the fray and uncover the truth, or would she retreat behind the fortress of her privilege? Melissa's heart thudded in her chest as Clara crossed the threshold. The warm smile that typically greeted her now seemed restrained, almost hesitant. Clara's eyes, usually sparkling with the light of resilience, darted nervously to the necklace. Melissa felt an inexplicable urge to reach out, to bridge the chasm between their lives with a simple question. But the weight of her own privilege made it difficult to articulate. "Clara," she began, her voice unsteady, "I found this." Clara's gaze dropped to the shining ornament, a flicker of recognition passing over her features. "Oh, I must have left it behind. It isn't worth much." Her words were hurried, almost dismissive, yet they held a depth Melissa couldn't ignore. "Is that true? It looks valuable." The curiosity in Melissa's voice was unyielding, her mind racing with implications that rattled her previous notions of wealth and status. Clara shifted on her feet, a slight sigh escaping her lips. "Sometimes things have a story. This one does. It was given to me by someone significant, but I never wore it much. It feels too grand for me." A new wave of urgency surged through Melissa. She took a step closer, instinctively wanting to shield Clara from the heaviness of her own circumstance. "What's the story behind it?" she pressed, feeling the invisible boundaries of their worlds push back against her inquiry. Clara glanced towards the floor, her voice barely a whisper. "It's just a reminder of who I was, not who I am." The vulnerability in her words sliced through Melissa's defenses, exposing a part of her own fragmented identity, caught between the polished persona of a corporate lawyer and the gnawing guilt of unearned privilege. Melissa thought about the countless hours spent toiling over contracts and negotiations, the deals made that often ignored the very human lives they affected. Suddenly, her profession felt empty, a stark contrast to the real stories contained within each object and person. She questioned her own motivations. Was she truly an advocate for justice, or merely a participant in an elitist game? The silence stretched between them, charged with shared understanding. Clara's face held a mixture of apprehension and warmth, and Melissa felt an overwhelming urge to connect, to share her own struggles and aspirations. The weight of the necklace felt heavier as she realized it was a symbol of something far more profound than worth. It was emblematic of dreams and disappointments, resilience and sacrifice. "I've always admired you, Clara. You make everything feel brighter," Melissa admitted, her cheeks flushing. Clara's guarded expression softened slightly, but the walls she had built were palpable. The two women, inhabiting such different worlds, found themselves at a crossroads. "How do you manage to maintain your own light, despite everything?" Melissa's question hung in the air, her desire for genuine connection, the driving force behind her words. Clara hesitated, glancing timidly toward the necklace once again. "It's easy to lose sight of who you are when life gets heavy. I've learned to hold tight to the things that matter, even when they're buried beneath difficulties." Melissa's resolve to shift her reality solidified in that moment. She realized the decision before her wasn't merely about discovering Clara's story, it was about redefining her own. Could she step into the light and confront the darker corners of her privileged existence? As the weight of her choices combined with the sincerity in Clara's eyes, she felt prepared for a transformation she hadn't anticipated. But as she began to formulate a plan to engage more fully with Clara's world, she worried about the repercussions of such involvement. Society's expectations loomed, threatening to draw her back into comfortable complacency. What if stepping forward meant abandoning everything she had built? The question lingered in her mind as she locked eyes with Clara once more, then faltered at the reality of what she was venturing into. In that moment of tension, Clara's unexpected words broke through her thoughts. "Are you prepared to truly see what lies beneath? Because once you do, there's no turning back." Melissa inhaled sharply, the truth echoing in her heart. The path ahead would challenge everything she thought she understood about herself and her world. The decision to embrace that challenge loomed larger than the necklace itself, an invitation to authenticity. With determination swelling within her, she realized the journey to understanding Clara, and ultimately herself, was only beginning. As Melissa stared into Clara's eyes, a myriad of emotions swirled within her: curiosity, fear, determination, and a desperate longing for connection. She could feel the invisible tether between their worlds tightening, threatening to pull her into a realm she had meticulously avoided. The challenge Clara posed reverberated through her thoughts like an unwelcome echo. Was she truly prepared to confront the reality behind her privilege? With each passing moment, the discomfort of her situation swelled. Melissa took a step back, breaking the intense energy that had enveloped them. A deep breath steadied her nerves as she shifted her focus, channeling her thoughts into something more actionable. She needed to approach this transformation not just as a spectator, but as an active participant in her own personal evolution. "What do I need to do?" The question slipped from her lips before she had a chance to analyze it completely. It hung in the air between them, an olive branch extended not only to Clara but also to herself, a commitment to begin dismantling the walls that had come to define her. Clara's brow furrowed slightly, her surprise evident. "You're serious?" "Absolutely. I can't keep living in this bubble," Melissa replied, her tone firm but reflective. The articulate lawyer who typically navigated boardrooms with ease now found herself adrift in an uncharted emotional landscape. She had spent years crafting an image, but now it felt suffocating, wrapped tightly around her like a noose. "First, you have to understand that change doesn't come easy," Clara cautioned. "Are you ready to face uncomfortable truths?" "I need to," Melissa affirmed, her heart racing with the gravity of her sincerity. "I want to see beyond the surface. I want to really understand where you come from." Clara nodded slowly, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes. "There are community centers, shelters. I volunteer at one, teaching basic skills, job readiness, life skills. It's not glamorous, but it's real." Melissa's mind painted vivid images of these settings. Flashbacks of her past self flooded her. Tendrils of old ambitions clashed with new aspirations. Though she had once scoffed at what she saw as menial contributions, a begrudging respect for that work began to sprout within her, fueled by the stories she now craved to hear. Perhaps she could step into this world not as a lawyer but as a learner. "Let me volunteer with you," she blurted, her words tumbling out like an untethered avalanche. Clara raised an eyebrow, the corners of her mouth curving slightly. "You really mean that?" "I do. It's time to roll up my sleeves and dig in," Melissa replied resolutely. The urgency within her surged. This wasn't just about Clara anymore. It was about cultivating a new identity, one anchored in authenticity rather than the artifice of wealth. Yet, beneath her bravado lingered an undeniable trepidation. Would she really be able to walk among people whose daily struggles tore at the very fabric of what she had taken for granted? Each breath deeper than the last, she found herself longing for Clara's guidance as she considered stepping out of her comfort zone. "Come by tomorrow morning," Clara said, warmth creeping back into her smile. "We'll start there. Just remember, it may be challenging." "I'll be ready," Melissa vowed, though inside, self-doubt stirred uneasily. As she left the meeting place, the city streets looked different, each corner holding a potential revelation, echoing the promising journey she was about to undertake. But just as she began to visualize her new path, a sudden thought snagged her. What backlash would she face from her colleagues, her peers, even her family? The looming prospect petrified her. What if her efforts to connect only served to amplify the divide? The duality of her fear clashed with her burgeoning resolve. This was the crucible that would shape her renewed identity. No longer could she linger in the comforting shadows. The time had come to step into the light, but at what cost? Uncertainty filled her with energy as the night enveloped the city around her. Tomorrow would hold new opportunities, yet it also threatened to unveil her weaknesses. And perhaps even more daunting, could she truly embrace the countless stories of those she was about to meet? Would they shatter her initial naive perceptions or forge them anew? Melissa clutched the necklace tightly in her hand, the cold metal a stark reminder that every journey begins with a single step into the unknown. With each heartbeat echoing the weight of her decisions, she began to understand. She could either continue on her curated path or confront the messy, beautiful truth waiting just beyond reach. Both choices demanded courage, but only one could bring forth the authenticity she was desperate to claim. What stories would she uncover, and how would they shape her into the woman she yearned to be? Her resolve tightened, a new question swirling in her mind. Was she ready to face the complexity of her own humanity? The morning dawned with a dim light filtering through the gray clouds, a stark contrast to the vibrant hues of the previous day. Melissa wrapped a scarf around her neck, trying to fend off the chill that seeped into her bones. She glanced in the mirror, taking stock of her appearance, a sharp suit, perfectly styled hair, an outward representation of the life she had crafted. But today, that veneer felt hollow, a costume for the real thing that lay ahead. Riding the subway, she felt a gnawing anxiety in her gut that threatened to unravel her resolve. Each stop brought her closer to a world that existed beyond the polished glass and marble of her boardroom. As the train lurched and stopped, she steeled herself to bridge these disparate realms. She had committed to exploring authentic existence, but questions plagued her. Who would welcome her? Would they see through the facade of her wealth? Arriving at the community center, she stood outside for a moment, a stranger on the threshold of unfamiliar territory. The vibrant energy of the bustling entrance beckoned her, but a whisper of uncertainty lingered in the corners of her mind. She pushed through the door, and a wave of sound washed over her. laughter, chatter, the low hum of life in close quarters. Clara was waiting just inside, a beacon of warmth amidst the chaos. "You made it," she said, motioning for Melissa to join her. Fresh bouts of anxiety attacked Melissa as she scanned her surroundings. The room was filled with individuals of various ages, each absorbed in their tasks, some learning to type, others practicing mock interviews, all with a sense of purpose she recognized she had forfeited. Melissa felt an involuntary shudder, a reminder that she had come to strip away her preconceptions, yet stood vulnerable before these new challenges. "Let's get started," Clara suggested lightly, sensing Melissa's hesitation. "We're doing a workshop on resume building today. Dive right in." Rather than allow her instincts to retreat, Melissa pushed herself forward into the fray. She observed the individuals in the room, aware that they were each carrying burdens she could scarcely fathom. A pang of guilt tugged at her heart, but she battled against it. This was her chance to contribute. As the workshop commenced, Melissa found herself fumbling for words, her once powerful legal rhetoric dissolving in the faces of those eager to reclaim their stories. One participant, a middle-aged man named Chris, struggled with his presentation, his past filled with lost opportunities, yet embers of hope flickering in his eyes. As he nervously shared his journey, Melissa absorbed his story. It resonated deeply within her. "Your experience in construction is valuable," she said, her voice steadier as she took on the role of encourager. "We can frame that in your resume to show your skills in project management." For the first time, her eyes sparkled with genuine engagement rather than an obligation to perform. The day wore on, each interaction unveiling the resilience buried beneath layers of hardship. She felt herself transforming, her insights, once reserved for board deliberations, now directed toward uplifting others. But when Clara noticed a shift in the air, caution flickered in her expression. "You're doing well, but remember, you're here to learn, not to save anyone." Melissa's resolve wavered. What did that even mean? Was her intention to help mingling dangerously with a desire to be seen as a savior? She felt the rush of urgency clash with a deeper truth. In her ambition to connect, was she risking the authenticity of the experience by placing herself in a position of power? By the end of the day, exhaustion washed over her, mingling with an exhilarating realization. She had glimpsed edges of herself she had long kept buried. Yet, the day's interactions also left her with unsettling questions. How much farther did she dare to go into these interactions? Would she encounter truths that might really shake her foundations? As she collected her things, thoughts of Chris and others she had met filled her mind, igniting an insatiable curiosity. The threads of her previous life began to unravel, embroiling her in a new realm of possibilities. Yet fear and desire grappled within her. What other truths lay on the other side of her newly forged connections? Stepping back into the city streets, Melissa felt a renewed sense of purpose amidst the chaos of life around her. But at what cost was she willing to reshape her identity? Could she navigate these new relationships without losing herself? The implications of her decisions sunk in deeply, a weighty tension rising as another thought materialized. Soon she would have to confront Clara's past, something hidden behind that remarkable necklace, and the truth connected to it could unravel everything she was starting to build. The weight of the evening's encounters clung to Melissa as she stepped through the front door of her apartment. The familiar surroundings felt somehow foreign. The immaculate space that once radiated security now seemed eerily void. She dropped her bag on the sofa, feeling the tension in her shoulders intensify. Seeing herself reflected in the sleek surfaces of her home, she couldn't ignore the dissonance between her crafted life and the unsettled emotions now swirling within her. She moved mechanically to the kitchen, pouring a glass of water, but the cool liquid didn't quench the burning questions within. How did she deviate so far from her true self? The thrill of connecting with Chris and others had planted seeds of doubt regarding her previous pursuits. What was she really searching for? Salvation for herself, or for them? Her phone buzzed on the countertop, bringing her back from the tumultuous sea of her thoughts. It was Clara, her message simple but powerful. "Let's talk. Tomorrow, 3 p.m.? The invitation was innocent, yet it felt loaded with expectation and urgency. Clara had seen something in Melissa that she hadn't yet recognized in herself, a longing for connection that went beyond traditional boundaries. Melissa mulled over the choice as she slid down onto the cool tile floor. The memory of Chris's smile caught her off guard, bright amid a background of muted struggle. Here was a man who had faced adversity, yet somehow, even in his uncertainty, he found a way to stand taller, to hope. Was that what she was missing? A genuine willingness to confront her vulnerabilities while helping someone else embrace theirs? Her phone buzzed again, this time pulling her into a series of texts from a friend, inviting her to a charity gala next week. The usual excitement in her raced heart felt muted, devoid of the fervor it once created. While her peers reveled in the glamour of the evening, she knew any enjoyment would be taught with a newfound awareness that the glimmering heights of privilege felt increasingly disconnected from the realities of those at the other end of the spectrum. Pulling herself up from the floor, she recognized the shift happening within her. It was naive to think she could stay untouched in this new journey. Her previous life was cracking, revealing a raw and uncharted space. Would she be brave enough to enter unknown territories of emotional honesty, not just for herself but for Chris, Clara, and the others who shared their truths? The next morning came with a new determination. She dressed with intent, opting for a modest outfit that stripped away her former armor of high-end suits. As she moved through the day, her mind intertwined the complexities of her changing identity and her growing sense of accountability to the new people she was meeting. Could she carry their stories with integrity while exploring her own? Arriving at the designated coffee shop for her meeting with Clara, Melissa felt a twinge of nervousness, acknowledging the challenge of exposing her evolving self. Clara was already seated, her fingers idly twirling the necklace that had captivated Melissa's attention. The shimmer caught the light, an almost ethereal beauty, yet Melissa knew that Clara's connection to it ran deeper than its surface allure. "What's this really about?" Melissa asked as she settled into the chair, her voice steady but probing. She felt the urgency of their conversation pressing against her chest. Clara looked up, surprise flickering across her face. Then it evolved into a considering gaze. "Which part?" she replied, a hint of wariness creeping in. "The necklace," Melissa said, leaning forward slightly. "There's a story behind it, isn't there?" The air thickened with unspoken words, and the revelation of Clara's truth loomed over them, ready to spring forth. Would this lead Melissa to greater understanding or deeper conflict? As she awaited Clara's answer, the uncertainty that accompanied her curiosity wrapped around her like a tight coil, leaving her anxious for the truth to unravel. What would it reveal about Clara and about herself? Clara hesitated, her expression shifting from surprise to contemplation. A flicker of vulnerability crossed her features, and Melissa could almost see the delicate balance of trust and fear in her eyes. The moment felt suspended in time, the weight of anticipation pressing against Melissa's chest. "It belonged to my mother," Clara finally said, her voice quiet yet resolute. "She passed away a few years ago. I wear it to feel closer to her, to remember who I am beneath everything else." Melissa processed Clara's words, feeling a surge of empathy. In that instant, she saw not just the physical representation of loss embodied in the necklace, but also a deeper narrative of identity, an exploration of self born from grief. "What do you think she would think of where you are now?" Melissa asked, her voice dropping to a whisper, aware that they were wading into deeply personal waters. Clara's brow knitted, and the necklace swung gently between them as she considered the question. "I think she'd be proud that I'm finding my voice," she said slowly, her fingers tightening around the delicate chain. "But she would also ask me if I'm truly being honest with myself." Melissa felt a shiver run through her. In Clara's reflection, she saw her own struggle mirrored back, a desire for authenticity tested against the backdrop of social expectations. "Do you think I'm being honest with myself?" Melissa ventured, her pulse quickening. "Yes," Clara replied unhesitatingly. "But honesty is layered. You have to take the time to peel back each one." These words ignited something within Melissa. Honesty, true honesty, required not just acknowledgement of feelings, but an active engagement with them, probing her unvarnished reality. Suddenly, the coffee shop felt too small, stifling even, as her mind raced through the implications. "Tell me what you're really feeling about everything that's changed since you met Chris," Clara prodded gently, tilting her head with an earnest gaze. The question struck hard, like a hammer against glass. In her heart, Melissa had felt an awakening, a tugging sensation that whispered of possibility and transformation. The very connections she'd formed felt electric, but they also bore the weight of her prior inauthenticity. It was a chaotic mix of exhilaration and trepidation. "I feel alive," Melissa admitted slowly, her voice low and unsteady. "I didn't realize how empty my previous pursuits were until I started connecting with people who are fighting just to survive. It feels overwhelming." "Why does it feel overwhelming?" Clara pressed, an encouraging firmness in her tone. "Because I fear what I'll have to confront," Melissa thought, but didn't speak. The unearthed vulnerability threatened to unravel her, the possibility that she had buried her own desires and fears beneath layers of success and status. "Maybe it's time you engage with those fears," Clara suggested, an undertone of challenge in her words. "What do you want, Melissa?" The question hung in the air, heavy and electric. It rattled through her defenses, demanding an answer she had not yet formulated. Could she fully confront the stark contrast between her past ambitions and her current revelations? "I need time to figure it out," Melissa finally replied, voice resolute yet soft. Clara nodded, an understanding crossing her features. "Just know that whatever you discover, you aren't alone in this." Melissa smiled faintly, buoyed by the weight of Clara's kindness, yet an unsettling tension gripped her heart. The truth was fracturing within her, pieces of identity shifting and realigning. As they finished their coffees, a silence settled between them, both women contemplating the depth of their shared conversation. Yet as Melissa stood to leave, a lingering thought gnawed at her. What would it take to acknowledge her vulnerabilities fully? What awaited her on the other side of that honesty? With each step away from the table, the questions intensified, leaving her straddling the precipice between familiarity and the unknown. The moment of truth beckoned, both tempting and terrifying, as she realized she was on the verge of a significant shift. What discoveries lay ahead, waiting to be unearthed in the labyrinth of her own psyche? Melissa stepped into the bustling streets, the noise of the city echoing in her ears, yet feeling eerily distant. It was as if she had been temporarily transported to a realm where clarity visited fleetingly before slipping away into obscurity. The sun was bright, illuminating new facets of the world around her, yet her heart wrestled with the shadows of turmoil. She had walked away from the coffee shop with more than just unanswered questions. She carried a strange urgency to dive deeper into her emotional landscape. Each step felt like a portal to a parallel existence, one where she could unearth the layers obscuring her true self. The conversations with Clara sparked an inner restlessness. It was a call she could no longer ignore. As she threaded through the crowd, Melissa resolved to confront her buried desires and fears head-on. She couldn't shake the image of Clara's necklace, representing loss yet also resilience, a reminder of the strength that comes from grappling with one's own truth. Determined to take action, Melissa made her way to her corporate office. The familiar glass facade towered before her, but today it looked different. It felt more like a cage than a sanctuary. She ascended to her floor, her heart racing with every step as thoughts of her past ambitions whispered doubts in her mind. Underneath the glossy exterior of her success, a burgeoning discomfort lurked, thrumming along with the pulsing energy of the city. Entering her office, Melissa paused to take a deep breath. The cluttered desk stood testimony to a relentless work ethic, but it also carried remnants of unfulfilled dreams. She sat down and stared at the invoices, meetings, and endless emails, distracting lists that had consumed her for far too long. In that moment, the weight of her professional duties felt simultaneously constricting and liberating. She craved space to reflect. She opened her sketchbook, a relic of her once fervent desire to paint, to create, an expression that had taken a back seat to corporate victories. As her pencil danced over the blank pages, the lines transformed into abstract shapes that felt alive. With every stroke, a sense of freedom unfurled within her. It was exhilarating and terrifying. The drawings spiraled out of control, yet she couldn't stop. They reflected a wild, unfiltered version of her thoughts, of everything she had suppressed to fit a mold dictated by expectations. But what did it mean, this urge to create? Was she, in some way, returning to herself? Melissa's breath quickened as she finally acknowledged the truth beneath her bravado. Her current career was only a fraction of who she was meant to be. She envisioned a future intertwining her professional skills with artistic passion, an intricate dance of analytical prowess and creative spirit. The realization ignited a fire within her, lighting the way to reclaiming her autonomy. However, that flicker of enthusiasm was soon clouded by doubt. What if stepping into her true identity meant dismantling the barriers she had built? What if she disappointed those who had come to expect a certain version of her? The struggle felt monumental, the risk of failure looming like a specter. Was she prepared to both face her vulnerabilities and dismantle the polished facade? The very thought made her stomach churn, but she knew if she didn't try, she would forever remain a passive observer in her own life. Just then, a message blinked on her phone, a notification from Chris, their recent conversations flooding back with rich texture. "We need to talk. Something important has come up." Her heart raced, a thrill of both anxiety and excitement coursing through her as uncertainty twisted into opportunity. The crossroads beckoned, not just in her relationship with Chris, but in her journey toward authenticity. A conversation was meant to unfold, and she sensed it would challenge her in ways she hadn't yet imagined. Would she confront this new reality, or retreat into familiar territory? As she steeled herself for the unknown, Melissa wondered, what could this pivotal moment reveal about her desires and fears? What truths were waiting to be discovered in that conversation, ready to reshape her identity once again? Melissa felt her heart race in sync with the whirlwind in her mind. The message from Chris was both a spark and a catalyst, igniting a slew of questions that threatened to engulf her. She was teetering on the edge of personal transformation, yet here was a reminder of the life she had created, a life defined by structure, predictable outcomes, and an adherence to external expectations. But the internal battle mirrored the kaleidoscope of her recent sketches, chaotic, vibrant, and meaningful. Taking in a deep breath, she steadied her hands, casting aside the lingering fear of facing Chris. This conversation could redefine everything, yet she couldn't allow the pull of anxiety to lock her in place. She needed to decide what she was truly after. The minutes dragged as she mentally rehearsed the countless scenarios of their discussion. Would he press her for more intimacy, or would he brush off their relationship, suggesting it was time to separate paths? Both outcomes filled her with dread, but also with an undeniable sense of urgency. What if she framed this meeting as more than just a conversation? What if it became a dialogue about who they both aspired to be, rather than who they had settled for? With renewed determination, she closed her sketchbook, setting it atop the organized chaos on her desk as if closing a chapter. The office felt constricting, but now it bore the marks of her conflict. Picking up her phone, she texted Chris back, suggesting they meet at a nearby park instead. The idea of engaging in conversation amidst nature felt more organic than the sterile walls of their office environment. Outside, the sun dazzled against the backdrop of bustling city life. People passed, each absorbed in their own thoughts, their own battles. Melissa felt oddly liberated amidst this vibrant chaos, as if stepping into a connected web of shared experiences. She smiled at a street performer strumming his guitar, his music threading through the air like the heartbeat of the city, echoing her own inner rhythm. As she settled on a park bench, a sense of peace enveloped her. Nature could be a soothing balm, and for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Not just with Chris, but within herself. She realized this wasn't solely about him. It was about her own reckoning. When Chris arrived, he bore his usual air of assurance, yet she noted the slight crease in his brow, a flicker of something unarticulated. They exchanged greetings, his words laced with a casual ease that quickly faltered as he sat. In that moment, she realized how much she longed for real connection. She wanted more than simple pleasantries. She desired authentic engagement, a grasping at the roots of their shared lives. "Melissa," he began, pausing as if gauging her readiness. "I've been thinking a lot about us." Her stomach twisted with anticipation. Here it was, the opening they needed. She took a breath, steadying herself, ready to pour out the truth she had long withheld. This was her chance to articulate her fears and desires. "Me too," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I want to talk about what we've been avoiding, the expectations, the roles, everything. But before she could continue, he interjected, a hint of tension in his tone. I know we've been good as a team, but I can't shake this feeling that we might be lost. Lost. The word sank in. It was a term heavy with implications, shaping the air around them. Could it be that both their paths needed revisiting before they could even begin to communicate effectively? A silence stretched between them, pregnant with unspoken promises and potential futures waiting to be brokered. Melissa knew this conversation was more than an assessment of their relationship. It was a confrontation with the lives they had built, a summoning to redefine what passion meant to each of them. Just as she steeled herself to dive deeper into their tangled emotions and aspirations, a familiar melody wafted through the air, a reminder of the street performer. As the notes swirled around them, Melissa realized she stood at the precipice of something profound. What if this conversation could unearth hidden desires, not just within their relationship, but for her own personal journey? The words hung in the air, a delicate balance between vulnerability and fear, and Melissa could feel her resolve hardening. Would she seize this moment to reshape her identity through honest dialogue? Or would she let fear guide her back to silence and acquiescence? As their faces mirrored the uncertainty that surrounded them, determination coursed through her veins. Before we go any further, she said, her voice resolute, I need to share something significant. It might change everything. The moment hung precariously in the air, suspended between anticipation and dread. Melissa's heart drummed loudly against her ribcage, her resolve forcing her to confront the weight of unspoken truths. She felt a shift within her, a tremor of possibility, as she prepared to articulate the thoughts that had stirred deep within her soul. Chris, she began, her voice breaking slightly, I've been doing a lot of soul-searching lately. I think I've been hiding parts of myself, even from you. It's like there are whole areas of my life that I've neglected in favor of what felt safe and stable. Words tumbled forth, faster than she anticipated, spilling over the edges of her restraint. Chris's eyebrows knitted together, a flicker of comprehension crossing his features. What do you mean by that? You've always seemed so content. Content? The word tasted bitter on her tongue. I've mistaken contentment for fulfillment. It's as if I've been drawing in the lines of a picture that isn't truly me. I've prioritized being a good partner and employee over being authentic. The muscles in Chris's jaw tightened as he processed her confession. But Melissa, our life, it has its strengths. We've built something that works, haven't we? Yes, but at what cost? She countered, her voice gaining strength. My own aspirations feel overshadowed by this image of who I thought I was supposed to be for you. For us. I don't even know what excites me anymore. Her admission hung heavily in the air, the truth stark and raw. With each word, she felt layers of herself peeling away, unveiling a vulnerability she had shunned for too long. She needed to be honest, not just for Chris, but for herself. Chris shifted uneasily on the bench, his expression shifting as if he were grasping at threads that had suddenly come undone. I don't understand. Are you saying you want something different than what we have? Melissa swallowed hard, her throat tightening. It's not that I don't love what we have, but I can't help but feel there's more. I want to explore not just our relationship, but who I am outside of it. I need this freedom to create. The sketches, the art, the messy chaos that comes with being true to myself. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. And what if that means risking everything we've built? What if you don't find what you're looking for? That question hung in the air like an executioner's blade, ready to drop. She felt an undercurrent of doubt threaten to drown her. But something flickered within her, a growing flame of courage she could not extinguish. I have to take that chance. There's too much of myself I've neglected. I need to find my own rhythm again, like that street performer. Maybe it's time for me to amplify my voice, regardless of where it leads me. Chris's silence deepened, but Melissa could see the conflict brewing in his gaze. It pained her to see him struggle, yet this was a conversation floated on the waters of honesty, where both their fates could be reshaped, not just as partners, but as individuals. Melissa, he said slowly, I want to understand this better, but that doesn't mean I'm not scared. Good, she replied with a slight, bittersweet smile, revealing the truth that echoed within her. It's okay to be scared. It means we're growing. The park seemed to swirl around them with life, but in that moment, they remained fixed in their own world of vulnerability and revelation. She felt both relieved and unsettled, uncertain of where their conversation would lead. But a new realization dawned within her, a clarity that came from confronting their fears. She distinctly felt the weight of her potential rising like a tide, and she was determined to ride its wave. "I think we need to explore what this means for us," she concluded, her voice imbued with new strength. "What if we both redefine our paths, not just as a couple but as individuals?" Before Chris could respond, a realization struck Melissa. Perhaps, amid this moment of uncertainty, lay the secret to her awakening. The chance to embrace not just her own identity, but to challenge Chris to confront his as well. As the words left her mouth, she found herself propelled forward, a feeling both exhilarating and terrifying. Inspired by newfound resolve, they were indeed standing at the edge of transformation. What would happen if her decision to pursue her passion ignited a shift in Chris, too? And more importantly, what if this exploration presented them both with the opportunity to create a wholly different future together, or apart? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, Melissa felt the first tendrils of hope surrounding her. But the path ahead remained lit with uncertainty, and the stakes felt higher than ever. Would they embrace this chance, or would fear pull them back from the brink? The days following that transformative conversation unfolded in unexpected ways, each moment steeped in both challenge and discovery. Melissa found herself infused with a newfound energy, determined to claim ownership over her identity, while forging a path toward authenticity. As if in synchrony, she also sensed a shift in Chris. The air between them vibrated with tension, but it was different now. It held the promise of growth. Melissa delved into her creative pursuits like a painter with a fresh canvas. She revisited the idea of art, once shelved in the complexity of her corporate life. Each stroke of her paintbrush felt like peeling back layers of expectation that had bound her for too long. Clara's words echoed through her mind. "You have to take the time to peel back each layer." And so she did, allowing the unveiling of her raw truths to guide her. Meanwhile, Chris confronted the reality of his own fears. He began sharing his struggles, the doubts he'd kept buried under the surface. They engaged in deeper conversations, discussing their hopes, aspirations, and the shadows that lingered in the corners of their relationship. Melissa marveled at this new connection they were forging, one rooted in vulnerability rather than just comfort. As the weeks passed, she stepped further into her role at the community center, feeling welcomed into a space that thrived on the authenticity she had been craving. She continued volunteering alongside Clara, learning not just about others' struggles, but about her own imperfections, those cracks through which the light could finally shine. Each interaction in the community transformed her perceptions, unraveling previously unexamined biases and privileges, replacing them with empathy and genuine connection. "I see how your work brings hope, Melissa," one participant named Angela remarked during a workshop. "You understand us, and that's powerful." Those words struck a chord, solidifying Melissa's ever-growing resolve. She was not simply an observer or a savior. She realized she was a storyteller, someone who could weave narratives of hope through the lives of others. In a moment of serendipitous revelation, the community center held an event that showcased the talents of its participants, allowing them to share not just their skills but their stories. Melissa volunteered to host the gathering. She stood on the stage, anxiety coursing through her veins, but she felt armed with purpose, a certainty that bridged her past and present. As she spoke, she shared about her own journey, allowing her vulnerabilities to cascade through her words, connecting them to the resilience of those around her. She saw the faces of her newfound friends, each lined with stories as rich and textured as her own. In that moment of clarity, she felt a deeper sense of belonging and purpose wash over her. When the event concluded, applause erupted, but more importantly, genuine connections flourished. Among the crowd, Clara stood with pride and gratitude shining in her eyes. This woman, once the cleaner in Melissa's life, had become a guiding influence, a beacon ushering her toward her true self. After the event, Clara approached her, arms open wide for a warm embrace. "You did it, Melissa. You're shining brighter than ever. she exclaimed. At that moment, Melissa realized she had not only transformed herself, but had contributed to the fabric of others' lives. She stepped back, breathless but fulfilled, feeling gratitude seep into every cell of her being. "But there's still something I need to confront," Melissa said, her heart racing as she realized that she could no longer avoid her dynamic with Chris. Their relationship had undergone a metamorphosis, yet the lingering fear of what it might become loomed. Change is rarely straightforward, and the path ahead felt uncertain. With her newfound strength echoing within her, she made plans for another meeting, one where she would challenge the boundaries of their relationship once more. As they met again in that garden, Melissa looked into Chris's eyes. Those deep pools of emotion had become familiar landscapes, remarking that he too came alive when he embraced vulnerability. "We've walked this journey together, but I wonder if our paths need to continue separately," she began, her breath steady yet her heart racing. The air crackled between them as she spoke. "I think we both can grow, but perhaps not necessarily in the same direction. My creative journey may pull me in ways you can't follow, and I don't want to tether you to my aspirations." Chris's breath caught in his throat, but instead of dismay, Melissa noted a flicker of realization unfold across his features. They were both traversing uncharted territories, and the notion that they could define their relationship on their terms felt liberating, rather than constraining. "Perhaps we can redefine what it means to love each other while pursuing our own passions," he responded slowly, the gravity of those words breaking the tension that had built up between them. And though uncertainty still lingered, an exhilarating lightness enveloped Melissa. She could feel it swelling within her, a tangible validation of her courageous decision. This was the proof she needed of her evolution. She had not only embraced her fears but had actively shaped them into opportunities for growth. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, both Melissa and Chris recognized that this moment of unspoken truth signified more than acceptance. It marked the dawn of personal autonomy. No matter which paths they chose going forward, they would forever carry the essence of each other's journeys within them. In the intricate tapestry of their experiences, Melissa felt solid confidence take root. Her identity, once defined by societal expectations and outer achievements, was now driven by an authentic narrative reflecting her true self. Stepping away from the meeting, she would not merely return to her past, but would carry forth the growth she had achieved, an undeniable transformation fueled by courage, purpose, and embrace of her vulnerabilities. Perhaps more importantly, she could now share a new story, a story forged within the lens of authenticity, a legacy not for herself, nor for Chris alone, but for anyone willing to peel back the layers of their own lives. The journey toward her individual resolution was far from complete, but with clarity animating her spirit, Melissa Harper strode confidently forward, ignited by the very foundation of her own humanity. The time is now to reflect. Are you willing to explore the layers of your own identity? What stories lie within you, waiting to be uncovered? Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.